Hey guys, back again. Just update on a few things. You've seen cavity. That's a few adjustments have been made. That's automatically adjusted according to the far distance, which you can now change. Now, so notice how the anti-aliasing is by default in CopperCube looks absolutely terrible. Two things in CopperCube that by default looks pretty bad graphics. One is the, poor quality lighting is probably one of them, but the third one, but anyway. So by default, so anti-aliasing, it needs really good anti-aliasing for one, and number two, you'll find just by default it's too raw. It's too much contrasting sharp coloring. Especially like long distance, it's the same as up close, the detail. There's a few ways around that anyway. So firstly get rid of the anti-aliasing. If you want to use post-processing, you can't use MSAA anti-aliasing in CopperCube, which does work quite well actually, but it won't work with post-processing. So there's a cavity, which looks good. And so now we've got FXAA working, which is one of my best post-processing effects, most useful actually. So I'll select it there. See that? It's gone away. Yeah, it does blur the image fraction. So this is at 50%. All these settings are between 0 and 1 typically, and by default it's 0.5 is your standard reasonably decent setting I try to put it at. Yeah, I mean there's imperfections there, but now if I go back to, there's a bit of blurring, you'll notice. It slightly blurs the image, but that actually is what I was going for, because of I was just talking about the image by default is too, this is cavity by the way, it's not meant for outdoor use, it's only for indoor use, so don't worry about this rock. Yeah, so as you can see, it highlights the edges and applies a bit of depth shading as well. But with the FXAA and the CopperCube graphics, by default it's just a bit too harsh, a bit too raw. So the smoothing effect, or the blurring if you like, that FXAA is known for, which does do that, I actually think it's a good thing. I think it looks better. So look at the hard edges now. Now FXAA on, off, on, so it makes a huge difference. But there is a little bit of blurring, but this is at 50%. You can turn it down to 10%, so I'll just go now, 10%. Okay, so it's reduced the effect of the anti-aliasing, but it's also made it a little bit more clearer. This is at 90% now. That's at 90%. It's not too bad. It's nice. It's quite smooth, but it's not too blurred. It's not too bad. Actually, it's pretty good. I actually prefer it with a little tiny bit of blur. That was my intention actually. If I couldn't get any blur, a tiny bit of blurring, I would have manually put it in anyway, because it smooths things out. So look at the terrain, 10%. Actually, I'll just turn it off. I'll put it back onto 90% and then switch it on and off. It's off. So notice how the terrain is like, it's too raw. The contrast between the outer edges of the trees and the plants is just way too harsh. It's not natural. FXAA is now on. That looks better. In my opinion, that looks a lot better. Yeah, you say it's a bit too blurred. Well, actually, I think a tiny bit of blurring looks good. It smooths things out. So I actually like it. I think that's better. Most games actually do use this, and they are blurred because they use this FXAA method. So that's at 90%. That's at 10%. It's still 10%, still giving a little bit of anti-aliasing. So I'll keep it at 10% and switch on and off. So they're on. That's on, off, on, off. Okay, it's only working just a little bit at 10%, but it's helping a little bit. That's at 90% now. So that's like really smooth. Off, on at 90%. So I've got it at 50% by default, or 0.5 is the setting. Yeah, so I couldn't get it to smooth the edges perfectly without causing some sort of blurring. I just couldn't get that to work, especially with DirectX. With OpenGL, I think that worked a lot better. Pretty sure. I started working with the OpenGL version because I had the code for it, and it did actually work really well. DirectX is by far the better one. OpenGL has so many problems with CopperCube. The terrain doesn't work properly when you've got more than one texture. The MIP maps just don't work properly. They're not set up. There's some broken bug that Nico never fixed. Even though I sent him the video and showed him exactly how to fix it about 5 years ago or more, he never bothered to fix it. Yeah, so I don't bother with OpenGL. It's just a waste of time in my opinion. Because of all these bugs that were never fixed. Could have easily been fixed. So this is FXAA. I would say this is the best post-processing you want to have used in your game all of the time, no matter what. It's so good and it's extremely efficient. The code I got for it. It's a very small amount. So there's the frame rate there. Turn it on. No effect there. I'll just check the frame rate on and off here. It barely makes any difference. It's amazing actually. Hardly any difference. Yeah, a couple of frames, almost nothing. It does a pretty nice job at smoothing things out. So there's, yeah, see, yeah, it blurs things a little bit, but I actually don't mind it. I like a bit of smooth. It's so much better with FXAA, if you ask me. So I put cavity back on. There's cavity. It looks quite nice with FXAA and cavity. It looks pretty good. Pretty sweet. That's way better than my opinion of my version of SSAA, screen space ambient occlusion. Still not happy with my version of that. It is working, but I'm really just not happy with it. I might actually go back to the original one I started with, which is a bit of a beast, but they're all a bit of a beast in the sense that it takes a lot of processing actually. But this cavity thing works, it's so simple, very simple, doesn't take much at all. Yeah, so that's why I like it. Gives a bit of edging. Don't think it's too much. Up close it sort of goes away, which is good. At distance, edge is clearer. Yeah, looks pretty good, I reckon. And it limits the amount of so all these post-processing effects have settings you can change. Alright, here's my post-processing file. Make sure you go into that every single time I'm making post-processing effect changes. Here's your standard ones. These are all your standard ones. They're not advanced. You don't need to run a depth buffer to create it. The advanced ones all you need to run a depth buffer. A depth buffer is creating the entire scene all over again for the sake of creating a depth buffer, because CopperCube depth buffer cannot be accessed while it's running in a forward rendering type of game engine, so you have to redo it, and that seems to be pretty normal. It's not out of the ordinary situation actually. So you'll find your frame rate drops by almost half. It's not exactly half, so there's like 100 okay, what I'm getting 188 now, 190. So I put cavity on. Cavity is a pretty low level depth buffer. There's a different version of it. That's not too bad, doesn't have a massive effect. FXAA as well. So that's pretty good. That actually, those two worked pretty good together in my opinion. For indoor, cavity works well for indoor, not for outdoor. You wouldn't want it for outdoor. Now we've got depth of field. You would have seen some of these. There's depth of field. It's subtle, but so look at so it's meant to blur the distant things only. The further away it is, the more blurred it is. So look, I'll turn it off. So that's normal. And that's on. See the sun gets blurred at distance, and the clouds, which is, I don't know, it's reasonable. And the trees in the far distance. The further away it is, the more blurring, which is good. So that's at 50%. So I go 10% like that, or 90% like that. That's a lot more blurring. See, you'll see the terrain. If you look at the terrain, you can really tell. That's the biggest way you can sort of see the difference. It's 10%. 90%. The trees, yeah, you can see them blurring. A little bit harder to tell, but you can see it. 10%, 90%. So I probably wouldn't go 90%. You know, 50% is your generally works quite well. I'll try to find a good medium between the two extremes and then make that 50%. So that's how I've adjusted all the numbers. What I find is a pretty nice happy medium between too much and too little. I change the numbers and the formula to suit that to be 50%. That's 10%. 90%. So yeah, I think 50% is probably pretty good. But you can change that how you like. So depth of field. So there's a few more adjustments now you can make. So that's just changes the strength of it, just the name of it by itself. Obviously you've got to make it true. So the name of it plus on as true sets C node property. I mean, some people couldn't even work out that. That's a bit of a shame. Depth of field, and then you can change the blur amount between 0 and 1, and the distance. The distance thing is actual units of game, so it's anywhere 1 to 5,000, whatever you want to do. This is what I would generally encourage for indoors, somewhere between 2 and 600, and outdoors between 1,000 and 2,000. Now, it says these are affected by the post-processing depth of the depth buffer. Now that's the PP depth is set here. Set C node property root post-processing depth. So you can set the depth across all these advanced post-processing shaders adjusted at the same time. But if you want to alter each one individually, there are many of them you can. Cavity is not affected by the post-processing depth. It automatically adjusts. So the strength here will automatically adjust for whatever depth you're using. Same with the spotlight. Yeah, I got a spotlight now, an actual proper spotlight that works on all scenes, all geometry, in all situations. No one's ever been able to do that properly as yet. It's not vertex driven, it's per pixel, so that's the difference. The existing spotlight's per vertex, and if you're using large vertexes, it screws up the lighting completely. That's why it causes all these sudden brightness and darkness issues. It's just terrible. Unless you want to go to the trouble of making heaps of small vertices only, then the default CopperCube spotlight will be okay. But other than that, yeah, no, this works way better. Spotlight, I'll show you that. So I've showed you the depth of field. You can change the distance, but just notice if you're making for example, the distance more than the post-processing depth buffer distance, yeah, this here is going to limit it. So ideally you want to set this once across all of your advanced shaders here, and then tune each one individually. That's the best way to do it. Some of them had trouble, like cavity. I could change cavity to automatically adjust for that and not to be affected by it, but I just couldn't work it out for some of the other ones. They're too complex the way they're set up. So spotlight, that's automatically adjusted for regardless of whatever post-processing depth you use. It'll have its own spot distance, spot dist, so that's the distance. You can change that and it will automatically adjust to regardless of whatever the depth here. But that's pretty much the only two. All the rest are directly affected by the post-processing depth that you set. You shouldn't change this all the time. You should generally just set it once per scene and then go and adjust these individually is the best way. So there you've got your depth of field, you've got a distance adjustment, you've got a blur amount, and the strength of it is just changing it by the name of it. Same with God rays. Now here's a nice one. God rays have been updated. You can change the length of the rays and the width of the rays. It makes a big difference. And the strength of the rays is just changing the name of it. So I'll show you that. Okay, so we've got usual scene. I push activate God rays. So I've changed the length of it and the width. See how now it spreads out more? I think that's pretty cool, isn't it? Very cool. I can't remember the adjustment I've got set up already. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but yeah, it's, compared to nothing, it's pretty decent. Now, if you're facing the sun, the whole scene gets brighter, which is interesting. When you're looking away, it gets darker. Whether or not you think that should happen or not, but I think it's pretty good. It does actually get a bit brighter. Yeah, so there's that. And if I change it to 10%, I think that's changing the strength of it. I'd have to check. That's 10%. That's probably more realistic, isn't it? Not too bright. You don't want it too bright. Yeah, and that's like 90%. Yeah, the strength of it. Very bright. So as you turn around away from it, it'll automatically turn off. I've set it up that way because it seemed like the way to go. I mean, I could have had it on all the time, so it's always in a fixed angle, regardless of what angle you're looking at. I see that was actually adjusting through the grass. Yeah, so it'll actually adjust through anything. Side of buildings, see that? Side of buildings. This is at 90%, by the way, so it's a bit too strong. So I go back to 10%. I think that looks better. Looks way better. Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh? See, this is advanced post-processing. What's the frame rate like? So let's turn it on and off. So yeah, you're getting almost half. Not quite half, but almost half. So 190, so that'll be... half would be about 85, so it's a little bit more than half. Because you have to re-render the whole scene again. But once you've got that depth buffer, you can actually reuse that same depth buffer for multiple shaders. So you don't have to. You can use multiple shaders all at once. I'll turn FXAA on. I'll turn depth of field on. Depth of field. So it hasn't had a huge impact on performance. So if you're using one of these advanced post-processing shaders, you can just use all of them and it won't have a massive effect. It's quite good actually in that regard. So that's at 90%. It's at 10%. Yeah, so it's roughly half, but you're still getting well over 60 frames a second, and most people are happy with that. If you can get 60 frames, people are very happy. So, you know, I think it's worth the performance hit, frankly. I think it's totally worth it. If you want the best graphics, I think it's worth it. So I've got FXAA on, that looks better. Yeah, so COD rays back on, put it at 10%. Looks good, doesn't it? That looks good like that. Yeah. Still see a little bit of rays there. I mean, I could have theoretically changed it so the rays are on all the time and which way you're looking at it, but I had issues with the camera angle actually. Particularly when you're looking at one particular side, you'd go like this from this left side. Not the right side was fine, but the left side would go about here, and then the angles would reverse. And because it goes from like 360 back to 0 suddenly like that. It was just some weird thing. You have to code something to fix that because it was really bad. So I end up turning it off when you're looking at it sideways, past the sideways, more than 90-degree angle. It turns it off slowly. That was the best way I felt to do that. Yeah, there you got the building. That looks cool. Yeah, like about 10%, 10 or 20% looks good. It's 100, still over 100 frames per second. That's about 100 frames per second. Yeah, I guess as long as you're over 60, I mean that's still good. It's worth it. I'm a real pedantic, like horribly pedantic on performance. I want hundreds of frames per second all the time. But really, you don't need that. You just need actually 30 is like your minimum. Below 30, you start to notice clipping and jittering and all horrible stuff. But 60 is good. It's fine, totally fine. So I guess I don't really need to be so fussy with performance. But anyway, so there's the depth buffer. God rays, depth of field. Yeah, so the length you can change here, the width between 0 and 1. The depth of field distance should change how close to the player it starts to activate, the blur. Yeah, I mean ideally I think you could probably just change the depth of field strength, would actually do the same thing, sort of. I'd have to check that, but it might be doing something similar. There's your cavity, so you've got maximum darkness, how dark you want the cavity to be, the cavity strength itself, and the cavity width. The width is the edges. That's really, it's not really a cavity, it's the edge highlighting, how thick you want those edges to be. So I've set them up all by default. About 0.5 is a good balance that I think. You can change it. You can go to 0. You can go, in many cases you actually go above 1 if you want to. Not every case, but in most cases you can. But I've just sort of given you, what I think is a good broad range between very high amount and nothing, 0 to 1. Now, yeah, SSAO does work, but I'm still actually not particularly happy with it. Yeah, don't really like it. It looks a bit ugly. I actually think my original version that I did through Claude AI, which took forever to get working, I actually think that's the best one so far. So I might revert back to that actually, even though it's a complex beast, but it's the nature of the beast SSAO. So I've got initialize SSAO resources for each DirectX 9. So there's actually four individual shaders that have to run, or passes, I think you'll call it. It's quite the beast. So you've got your original shader, you know, it's not too, that one's not too long. Some of them are a bit longer than that. Then you've got to blur the outcome of it because it's all grainy. It's super grainy. Lots of little dots of black and white. Then you've got to blur it, and then after you've blurred it appropriately, then you've got to combine it. But actually, in my one, I've actually got another stage because the blur is not that great. And for each of those two shaders above, you've got your own callback set up, setting constants for it as well. If it's OpenGL, you have to reset the textures every frame for some reason. It's a bit weird, but so same thing with the blur shader. Now the main thing, the main running every frame, it's a bit of a beast SSAO actually to run it. So you've got there's 4 individual shaders. In my four individual sections typically. In mine I've got the main shader, then you've got a bilateral blur, typically works better, and then on top of that, still's not good enough in my opinion, I give it a Gaussian blur, which is the standard one in CopperCube, and then I combine the two together, so there's the combined target, and then run it that way. So it's basically got 4 separate main passes that you've got to run for that. It's quite a beast. It doesn't currently look particularly fantastic for all that work, so I might do a bit more work on that one later. So it's just got a setting to turn it on and off at the moment. It's just changed the depth only with that one. Spotlight, I'll show you that. That's pretty good. Okay, I'm going to turn the spotlight on. I've changed it to capital L, so it's spotlight like that. That's the correct spelling. You don't get the right spelling, it's not going to work. Alright, so you've got your scene, dark area, turn the spotlight on. Look at that, pretty good, huh? Pretty nice, round, smooth central area. You can change the size, the strength of it, lots of things. And this is per pixel now, it's not vertex. Vertexes are ignored, only every pixel. I'll turn cavity on, looks a bit better. I'll turn FX on. Yeah, so I think, FXAA is working, but yeah, I actually have noticed it doesn't work particularly good in the darkness because it uses the actual contrasting in light differences between edges to actually work. So yeah, it has its limitations actually, FXAA in darkness. I might try and look into that, see if I can fix that. But yeah, so this is a spotlight, works pretty good. You know, it's a proper spotlight. You look up into the sky, it's not going to brighten the sky, you know. And it's a distance, it's based on the depth buffer. So it's a proper distance adjusted setting. To update the distance, I'll go right click, see that? You can change the distance that it updates to. Or it can go right down low, left click that, it'll reduce the distance. Yeah, so you can change the size of the center circle area as well. You know, I think that's pretty good size, but you can make it bigger or smaller by just simply changing the inner and outer cone. I like to make the inner cone pretty small and the outer cone bigger because it sort of smooths out the outer edges better. That's how it is at the moment. Alright, these are all the basic settings. So by default I've got it at a distance of 500. Spotlight, most of the other settings are by default 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. The array length, actually that probably should be 0.5. Yeah, but you can change that to 1 if you want. Depth of field distance, the same as the depth buffer, 1000 units. Spotlight is 500. So if you're changing the post-processing depth distance, generally probably you're better off probably just doing that once and then readjusting these individual shaders separately. So that works. The spotlight amount, that means that's just simply the strength of the effect. It is automatically adjusted for ambient lighting. So for example, I turn that back up to closer to 50. Okay, so it's daylight. So it's a lot lighter. See how much lighter it is? You don't want you don't want it too bright during the day because it's affected by the ambient lighting basically. So yeah, that's automatically adjusts for the, but you will see something which is reasonable and fair. Tiny bit of brightness, but not too much. So yeah, automatically updates for ambient brightness, which is, I think that's pretty cool. So you don't have to manually recalculate everything. And by the way, you can not only change the ambient brightness, but the directional light. You might not have realized this. You can go well above 255. You can go up to 1,000 because it's 4 times the default setting. The default numbers you put in here, so instead of 250 maximum brightness, that will be changed to 1/4 of that brightness by default. So if you go up to nearly 1,000, you can't do it in this setting here, but you can do it via code. You can totally do it by code if you want to. If you want to have low ambient, which actually is the best, to put low ambient and high directional lighting, you'll get a sort of a look of shadowing effect, much more, without using shadows. Alright, I got code for that. So you get the name of the sunlight, and I can go up to 1,000 if I want to, but I find, yeah, 300 works pretty good. Let me go 350 on that one. I'll turn down the ambient a bit more. I'll put the directional lighting up a bit more as well. Alright, so the ambient brightness is much lower. The directional brightness is at maximum, but it's still too dark, obviously. Now fix that. You can just manually use code to update the directional light brightness more. So I'll go into 350 now. If I press that one, I've also got the spotlight on. I don't really want that. Yeah, so as you can see, it's a lot brighter, but there's also much bigger, darker areas so it's a bit like shading in a sense. It's not actually shadows, but I mean the back of trees probably look a bit too dark actually, like that. So yeah, maybe put the ambient brightness up a bit more and might be better. But anyway, that's one idea. You can sort of get a better shading effect like shadows without using shadows if you want to, doing it that method. Probably works quite good on like alien planets and stuff. Actually, that would look really good. Anyway, so see the rain effect out there? That's not a particle system. That's purely texture coordinates. Ha! That's a cheap weather system effect you can use in the distance. It's not good for up close, but in the distance you can do things like that. Yeah, so that's an idea you can use. Because the ambient brightness is low, the spotlight automatically is a lot brighter now. Alright, so back here just to finalise one more thing. So with the FXAA, see it's really rough, looks terrible. Graphics, put FXAA on, like that. Looks good, nice, but it's a fraction blurred. If you want to increase the resolution of the lines, the edges, you can put a sketch on. I think Hadikan asked me to remove the whiteness from the sketch, so I did that. Now it's just an edge detection. So I put sketch on now. See that? It's added a bit of line edge detection and added a little bit more clarity to the edges. If you want to use FXAA with more detail, you can. It will darken the whole image a bit though. See that? So it's putting an edge on everything. Anyway, it's just one setting for sketch. Yeah, 0.5 by default. So that'll be the strength of the effect actually. That's just, yeah, the thickness and strength of the effect basically. But yeah, so anyway, I hope you like the post-processing effects. Proper spotlight. No one's been able to do this ever in CopperCube before. Proper pixel spotlight. I mean, Just In Case came in the closest. He could do it for an individual node, but not for the whole scene. You'd have to attach it to every single node in the. That doesn't work that way at all. Yeah, it only works like probably good for like an indoor area that's one combined scene node totally by itself. It would work quite good for that, Just In Case's method. But other than that, no, you wouldn't use it. Anyway, so that's what it is for now. Got a few ideas. I want to add a few other ones. We'll see how we go. Anyway, for now, hope you like that, and let me know what you think. Cheers.